Uh, we were in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Nashville. I know a lot of us spent time in Orlando together at a conference. And man, you talk about some hotbeds now. Our CEO and myself, we'd even recently been to Jersey City. So what a talk about dodging bullets on those. But we started hearing about COVID-19, the coronavirus, early. We have a lot of West Coast schools that saw impacts quickly, and that got on our radar. Obviously, Building Solutions quickly, for some of you may not know who we are, we have a 30-year history as advocates and advisors for independent schools in matters of facilities, planning, master planning, construction, operational recommendations, best practices, peer review. We're certainly the gold standard when it comes to facility audits and project leadership. And as a thought leader in the independent school world, we knew people were going to be looking to us to have some recommendations. So quickly, we recognized a need to learn about COVID-19. We began really a process that wound up forming our Respiratory Health Threat Advisory Council. And that council continues to grow. And those are the people who will provide peer review and support as a part of the Clean Slate program as that becomes available to everybody. So Clean Slate is exactly what it sounds like. This is our approach and best practices on how we can effectively open our campuses as we begin to approach the 2020 school year. So what is COVID-19? Well, COVID-19 is a very infectious respiratory virus that originated, as far as we know, in mainland China. We certainly want to encourage everybody that is a part of the Building Solutions family and out there presenting themselves in the independent school world to use that nomenclature, COVID-19. We certainly don't want to attach any politicization or blame. We're hypersensitive to and very aware of that here at Building Solutions. We've heard all sorts of derogatory statements up to and including the Chinese virus. But COVID-19 is really our latest in that coronavirus family. We've seen H1N1, swine flu, SARS, all these type of respiratory health threats that have come over. COVID-19 is a little more aggressive in how infectious it is. The good news, though, it seems, is that we can at least maintain some management of the virus by practicing some social distancing standards and putting an increased level of attention on our personal hygiene. So how do we take those steps and apply them to opening a school campus to be ready for 2020 and 2021? That is a great question, because I can't get 3 kids to social distance, much less a classroom full of 5-year-olds at their first day of kindergarten. So we are certainly going to need to get into containment mode quickly. We feel that COVID-19 is going to impact our campuses in 3 dimensions chiefly, and we certainly understand how wide-ranging the effects of COVID-19 and the response to it are going to be, and we certainly don't mean to oversimplify, but we certainly do want to try to define areas that are going to be affected by COVID-19, because it helps us attack or at least have a plan of attack and be able to put some measures in place and some best practices in place so we can effectively operate our campus. The first bucket that we're going to talk about, or the first dimension, is certainly going to have an impact on our janitorial and custodial staffs, approaches, protocols, procedures. We know that social distancing and the restrictions that that's going to bring are going to place an increased demand on our campus operations and what our new campus is going to look like. How do we implement all these things and still maintain our campus culture and impart who we are to our constituency. This is the reason people choose independent schools, and we don't want to lose that sense of identity, and certainly want to gain back our sense of community as fast as we can. Lastly, and really where most of you know us from, this is going to have an enormous impact on our facilities, both in the space we use, how we use that space, and the impact that's going to have on our facilities team. So we're going to talk about those three dimensions and how it applies to a clean slate initiative. First, let's talk about that cleaning and sanitizing our custodial departments and how that we see this affecting them. Really, at the cornerstone of the program is helping campuses create best practices and a cleaning specification that can be utilized really in an ongoing manner. When we first, started looking at how we were going to service independent schools during this crisis, it was a response to COVID-19. In fact, if you look at the title of our webinar, it still says response to COVID-19, but just like everything else, we get new information daily. Stuff that we knew for sure to be true about the virus a week ago, we find is just as untrue this week. If you think in the early days of the virus, we were told masks don't do us any good. Now we're being told, hey, wear masks because it might help. So we're learning just like everybody else. I joke in the office as we're researching and coming up with these initiatives that somebody said it's like trying to hit a moving target. And I said, it's like trying to hit a moving target while you're falling out of an airplane. It's just constantly changing. So certainly want to be a part of examining what your cleaning specification is and making sure that that's something that you can continue. Because what we've learned is this isn't a response to COVID-19. This is a solution for respiratory health threats. This is not the first. This is not going to be the last. And we need to learn from this one. So this cleaning specification will be our ongoing model for cleaning and sanitizing as it has to do with controlling the spread of viruses and disease. Now that can be as simple as us performing a desktop review and comparing the plan that your team has already devised and is going to put in place with your peer schools. That could be taking your protocol and running it through our advisory committee and looking for opportunities to make it better, stronger, or look for shortcomings. It could be that you want to take an RFP that we have adopted and we have created in partnership with a member of our advisory council, and you just want to implement that. So that's sort of the high level offering on supporting your custodial staff. From there, you might outsource your janitorial and housekeeping staffs, or you may just feel like your staff would be overmatched implementing a sanitizing protocol like this, and you want to outsource that. Completely doable. We would help create the RFP, manage the solicitation of proposals, review those proposals, and then make recommendations on a contractor that's a good fit for your school that can continue to service your school as we learn how these viruses are going to affect our day-to-day operations. Certainly want to make you aware of supply chain demands that we're seeing. We understand that schools are going to want to implement temperature checks and health checks, and we want our staff is still engaging the students. We certainly understand that our lower school teachers are going to be standing right there in front of a line of first graders, and somebody's going to fall down and scrape their knee on the playground, and you're going to bend down to check it, and that kid is going to sneeze. And we want to make sure that our teachers are protected. But the supply chain, as we're understanding for personal protective equipment, is almost non-existent. And the supply chain for the cleaners and chemicals that we're going to use as part of these sanitizing cleaning processes, in some cases are on back order until July. That does not give us a lot of time to get our campuses up and operating. So we would encourage you to reach out early if this is an area that you need help with. Let us start looking at what you're doing and make these recommendations so that, maybe through the different organizations that we're involved in, we've heard some chatter that we might be trying to put together some purchasing cooperatives to get a little bit better buying muscle flex. But, if it doesn't take long to watch the news to understand that, we've got hospitals all over the world that are trying to reuse PPE. Well, what are we going to do when, 100 million kids and teachers go back to campus? Definitely something to keep in mind. Another component of our review of your custodial and janitorial department is, it might make sense to outsource some of these things. As we look at this next section and start talking about the effects of social distancing and what that's going to mean to our staffing and the demand on our staff, it might make sense to have some of these processes performed by outside companies so that our staff is free to cross-train and perform other services on campus. The next dimension that we see being affected by COVID-19 is our campus operations. No way to escape the effects of social distancing. It's going to be here to stay until there is a treatment or a vaccine. And what we know is going to be at a premium from the effects of social distancing on our campus operation is space. How are we going to accommodate the students that we have, knowing that most of us are already crammed for classroom space? What are some best practices to put into place? So as part of this review, we would want you to understand what peer schools are doing. And we have certainly seen all the things that you have seen. Staggered schedules, blended learning that uses the on-campus experience along with distance learning. What's right for one school isn't right for every school. And what Building Solutions offers, one, is data and the ability to connect and compare with peer schools. Two, we can certainly advise based on the demands this is going to place on your operational staff. And do you have adequate facilities to perform what you're trying to do on campus? Very important to all of us to get the kids back on campus and regain our sense of community, our campus culture. We know there's been a disruption in that as a result of distance learning. I can tell you, my son's school has done a great job with distance learning. And I have certainly heard the converse to that too, that there have been schools that have struggled to implement distance learning. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but this is going to be a part of what we do going forward, and we need to learn how to administer that where we still maintain our culture, maintain our school identity, and there's not this huge disruption to our pedagogy. Also, what are our COVID-19 test procedures? We have seen schools that are going to implement temperature checks, and that ranges from an app where they're doing this at home, and then the app would then register the temperature. And if the student has a temperature, they don't get to come to school that day. Schools taking temperatures in the queuing lines where you're dropping kids off for school. We are also working with what we anticipate to be the next members of our advisory council on some technology solutions to the temperature checks. Some thermal imaging technology is coming out that is affordable and reliable and would allow us to station thermal cameras at entrance points into buildings, and almost like you do, are very similar to what you do getting on an airplane. Instead of checking for metal, they're checking for temperatures, and that would be monitored. And kids that have a temperature would be sent back home for that day and be monitored. Associated with that, what are our protocols going to be on campus when a kid does test positive for COVID-19? And we certainly say that with an operational and a building facility space tilt to our cap. Gone are the days of Billy being in the clinic with a tummy ache and Susie gets a fever and she goes in there and waits with Billy until mom or dad can come pick her up. Fever is going to be considered symptomatic of COVID-19. So we'll need almost a quarantine-like clinic space dealing with kids who are showing symptomatic for respiratory health threats, as opposed to the traditional clinic space for bumps and bruises and upset stomachs. We certainly understand that these changes that you're making to your campus and how you're using space. For example, if we have a contracted athletics program for the next school year and we gain some gymnasium space, did we just gain dining space, or can we make some temporary classroom space? Are we going to use some of our outdoor space for outdoor learning? Are we going to bring in portable buildings? Are we going to bring in temporary classrooms? All of these things and all of these decisions we make have financial implications, not just on the school budget, but they can also have implications as it pertains to your master plan. We don't want to be making decisions based on COVID-19 that once we do have a vaccine or the virus runs its course or whatever natural acts play out, we don't want to have to rewind the clock and make expensive adjustments to get right back to zero to start back where we were on the master plan. We want to make sure that we're looking at the master plan, looking at the strategic plan, making adjustments as required, but making sure that all the decisions we make are feeding our culture, feeding our pedagogy, and are related strongly to the master plan. Here's one of those sections where there's not a super clear division of what bucket it goes in, but you could be looking at staff reassignments. And we certainly will talk about that when we talk about the facility side, but we're gonna have to get very creative. How are you going to police social distancing? It's fairly easy to spread kids out in a classroom once you find the space, but what do you do on a playground? What do you do in the common areas? What do you do between classes when kids tend to congregate on their off period or as they're working on projects together? Is this something that you train all of your staff members on how to enforce social distancing? Do you deploy your security team if you have a robust security team? We've seen schools that are using their coaching staff to do things like this. So certainly something we want to take a look at and help you understand what demands this is going to put on your team. And finally, not finally, my bad. We're having to use two different computers here, folks, so it's a little bit clunky. We spoke about distance learning being here to stay and being a part of this. To the chagrin of students everywhere, probably gone are snow days. Now that we know distance learning works and we're good at it, my guess is the first time it snows, teachers will upload the lesson plan the night before, and parents will put our educator hats back on and help our kids through distance learning. We know from talking to hundreds of schools now that, as I said before, some schools were very successful in deploying distance learning, and some schools stumbled. But even those schools that were successful, are we really prepared to continue this in a strategy that we can maintain in an ongoing manner? It's one thing for our campus to close and our teachers to upload lesson plans and be available via web conferences and emails. And at our school, we can just pick up the phone and the teacher will either call us right back or talk to Clinton on the phone, and it's been great. How does that work when we're coming back from spring break and all of the students who traveled out of the country or who went to, let's say, Disney parks, a beach, any place that your school deems is going to require a self-quarantine? Okay, well, how do we handle those kids? Now there's a portion of our class on campus, there's a portion of our class learning from home. That creates a new challenge. And what kind of staff allocations and adjustments is it going to take? We can't ask teachers to essentially teach two courses, one in the live classroom and then again one online. So we are compiling some best practices and some peer suggestions on what schools are doing of varying sizes and how they're tackling distance learning. We certainly feel at the heart of this is going to be a real thorough understanding of what your IT capabilities are. From a platform standpoint and a bandwidth standpoint, can you support your curriculum? Do you have something in place that supports the pedagogy? These decisions when this happened, teachers immediately, when COVID-19 happened, teachers immediately went into huddles. And my wife works at an independent school, and so I kind of get the inside scoop on listening to the teacher teams talk. And really quickly, we had to determine, well, what's essential? What do our kids have to learn? And now as we go looking at our schools and what space we need and what modifications we're going to make, if we determine something was not essential, are we now going to determine whether or not it's necessary? And what decisions like that are we going to make that feed our ongoing distance learning program? Finally, and where you know us the best is in facilities. Here's one of our super successful facility directors. I was given the okay on the picture, but not the okay on the name, so shall go nameless. If you look real hard, you can read behind the sunglasses. But you guys know us from the facilities world, and certainly there's no way that you could look at the demands this is going to put on our campus from a building and space standpoint, from a custodial, janitorial, housekeeping standpoint, and not think it's going to just really put an increased demand on our facilities department. In order to support an initiative like this, we'll certainly need to understand what available space you have on campus. So some type of review of your facilities is going to need to be done. Either a quick low-level assessment. If you have not had a facility audit, here's the time to get the facility audit. You certainly don't want to be making decisions that are going to affect the use of your campus for the foreseeable future without understanding exactly what's going on. Once we understand what space we have, then we can look at how do we support that plan for space reallocation. How is this going to affect the demand on the facilities team? What is the energy consumption going to look like on this building? Are we getting ready to energize buildings that we haven't energized in a while? If we're using outdoor space, how many times a day is that outdoor space going to need to be turned? Are we going to be pulling power and electricity? We have all kinds of decisions to make based on how this is going to affect our facilities team. Another component of this that we are looking at is ASHRAE is finally starting to speak out on making recommendations as it pertains to your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, on filter recommendations, frequency of changes, system design, the volume of air that's being pushed through. We have seen some really exciting research here through our advisory team. This is more on the healthcare side, that there's been some real successes in managing the spread of the virus by increasing the humidity in a building. So those are pretty simple adjustments to our BMS to allow the humidity in a building to increase. And we certainly understand the risks that go on with mold and increasing humidity. But what we're looking for is a way through COVID-19. Not new best practices, but we're excited about that research. We spoke before about needing isolation space. How are we going to create that space? And probably going to need to have that kind of space in each building so that those kids have a place to go and wait if they're symptomatic, or maybe we find out in the middle of the day that their mother tests positive for COVID-19 and the child is at school who's asymptomatic. We'll certainly want to need a space for them to go to. And then how do we turn that space over once that child leaves? Do we have the correct personal protective equipment in place so that our staff can go in and clean and turn that room and be ready for the next student or staff member that's going to need it? So very important as we look to tackle COVID-19 is to keep an eye on the big picture. If you've ever seen us present at a NBOA or a NISBO conference, or any time you've interacted with Building Solutions, you've certainly heard our Vice President and Chief Operating Officer, Dennis Palmer, gets on his soapbox about your three cardinal documents that you need to have at a school: strategic plan, a master plan, and a facilities audit. And the reason for that is each one of those feeds the ongoing operation of your campus. So understanding that the decisions that we're making in response to COVID-19 are now no longer response-oriented, they're solution-oriented, and they're going to be ongoing. Have we determined how those affect the budget, and are we doing this with an eye and a mindset on supporting the campus master plan, supporting the strategic plan? And some of those decisions that we make are going to need to be carefully thought out and advised. We've seen campuses have very little trouble, knock on wood right now, fundraising specifically as it pertains to COVID-19. And we've heard indication from some of our larger schools. Many of you are aware of our high performance campus program. Some of those schools have come back to us saying they've had tremendous response from their fundraising efforts. There's some delay. People want to make sure they have jobs, but provided that the economy opens back up, this is where we're choosing to send our schools. We're choosing to be in an independent school, to be in a church-based school, to be in a charter school. Whatever these decisions are we're making, we have those reasons. And I think we're seeing that parents understand that their support in those processes and their financial support is going to be the path through this. We are working with some schools who are using the Clean Slate program to create a per student charge that can be added to the tuition, a couple $100, $75. No school is the same, but we've seen schools approaching it that way, understanding that the costs associated with developing your plan. Just like if you were to build a building, sure, there's a cost associated with the architect and getting through city permitting and all the things that it takes just to get shovels in the dirt. Then there's the actual cost of building, and people really only consider the cost of hammers, nails, and builders. There's not a lot of cost consideration in all that back end stuff. Same thing goes here. I think everybody understands that there's going to be a cost associated with getting our campus open for school. We need to make sure everybody understands this is an ongoing solution. These cleaning protocols, this isn't what we're going to do, on August 19th and then forget about it. This is what we're going to do on August 19th and on August 23rd and on September 1st and through the Christmas break. This is what we're going to do until we get to a spot where we can approach some type of new normal. And as we come out of this, we certainly want to talk about what campuses gain from being a part of the Clean Slate initiative. Obviously, Building Solutions has had a 30-year reputation, 30 years of building relationships, 30 years of acquiring these networks so that we can provide advice and oversight as your campus moves through this COVID-19 crisis. And the deliverables that will vary from school to school. Quite frankly, I wish that this was just color by numbers and I could tell you that everything I just said in this webinar pertains to your school and their school and the school next to them. It doesn't. We've certainly all learned that campuses are different, leadership is different, goals are different, culture is different. So we'll make specific recommendations for your campus after we've had a review session. Those recommendations can be as simple as desktop reviews of protocols you've put in place, or they might be protocols that we create for you and help you manage the implementation and provide oversight for, as we spoke about in the presentation. Certainly understand that projects are going to come out of this. We've had schools who have pivoted their construction efforts to include safe space for reception areas, for example. We are in the middle of redesigning a restroom space and a clinic space and a cafeteria space for a school. And they said, hey, look, let's just add to this project. We need to increase the size of the clinic, and we want some type of plastic screen or glass screen protection for our reception areas. People walk right into the lobby, and as they're waiting to be taken back to whatever part of the school they're going for, they want to protect those staff members. We understand that project leadership is going to spring from this, and we want to make sure that those suggestions on improvements feed the master plan, because we don't want to have something that we've got, like I said before, we don't want to have to undo something to get back on pace. Finally, we'll make sure that we craft a specific, usable, deliverable communication that the school can send out to parents, teachers, staff, the entire constituency, alumni, so that they'll know exactly what you're doing to battle respiratory health threats, what protocols you're putting in place, talk about the partnership with Building Solutions and a little bit about who we are. I can tell you, as an independent school parent, what we're all looking for right now is direction. We want to see, and it's not that parents are sitting around thinking, man, the school is just not doing anything. But, some decisive action goes a long way. And this is certainly a step one that is something that you can get in the hands of parents. We're partnering with these guys. They're school facilities experts. And here are all the things we're putting in place to make your campus safe as school year rolls around. I mean, we're all in this. We all want to get back to normal and see kids get to walk across the stage and football teams high-fiving and prom nights happening. I'll share, I have a senior in high school, and this kid has just worked her tail off. And, God love her. She didn't get a prom, and she's going to have some type of virtual graduation experience. And it's frustrating for them. It's frustrating for all of us, but we can certainly partner and make this happen. That's who we are. That's who we are as a country. And, I think back to how we respond to crisis. We come together. After 9/11, I remember the New York Giants had a home game the following weekend, and they elected to play the game. And they sang the national anthem, and they just unfurled this huge U.S. flag. I'm sure some of you recall this out on the field. And fighter squadron and a B-52 flew over. And they cut to commercial, like they always do. And when they came back, the announcers couldn't talk because the USA chants were still going on. And the announcers even said, I'm just going to be quiet. Just look at this. And so moving. And that's who we are. And one of the things that scares us so much about COVID-19, it robbed that from us. Instead of going out and coming together and being who we are, we were told, go lock yourself in your house, wear a mask, don't go see your parents. Man, I haven't hugged my mom in 8 weeks. I don't think I've gone that long, even when I was in college. So if we hang in there, show a little bit of fortitude, and I encourage you to participate in every webinar you can, even if you think you know the content, because it allows us to understand that we are all going through this together. There are companies out there like Building Solutions that are really grinding to find a way to put us all back on campus. And I want to encourage you to reach out to us. I'm going to put my contact information on the screen. You can go to our website there, /clean slate. There's a 5-minute version of the stuff that we covered in this last half hour, 40 minutes or so, that you can share with members of your constituency. If you got some leadership that didn't attend, or if you are in leadership and you want to share with your facilities or ops guys, please feel free to do that. If you have questions, I don't know how Dillard wants to handle those. Maybe he's been getting some through the chat. It looks like he's good to go, so I'll answer some of those.
Well, she is good.
Okay, folks, I've just unmuted everybody. For those who don't have a question, if you would unmute yourself.
You can come in.
Do I have to have one?
I see a question from David Marcus. David Marcus, go ahead.
Or do you
No.
want?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
We all mute if we're not.
I mean, I guess, you know what? If it has their. Sorry.
Hey, folks, just remember that you are unmuted right now. So if you're.
There we go. I've got David.
Okay, good. Tell me more about thermal cameras. I've looked at them a little bit. We've ordered some thermometers, but tell me more about thermal cameras, and more specifically, we have one entrance to our school. It's a secure entrance, and between 7:30 and 8, we've got about 400 people coming in within that 30-minute time period.
Yeah. So I wish there was a way to say that it was super duper fast. Sorry, am I rolling? Can you hear me? Okay. But it does create a log jam. There is a system that doesn't create the log jam as we're learning. So we're working with an actual healthcare company on developing our recommendations when it comes to that. And David, what I might do is if you'll send me an email to the email that's on your screen, you and I can connect offline, because there's a lot of information on this. But the individual from this healthcare company that we've invited to join our panel was in South Korea in January and February commissioning a hospital that was opening just as COVID-19 was hitting South Korea. So you can imagine his perspective coming from a country that is, this is not a police state, it's not a communist state, and how they responded and the uniqueness of the stories he can tell about what those schools did and what he saw while he was there is valuable. So probably valuable for you and I to connect David offline, but there are systems that are designed to capture, and they're being used, capture temperature readings on things as big as stadiums, where you just have hordes of people walking through and the camera analytic is running and it'll identify somebody that's hot. Now, that's a faster way to get people in your building if you put one of these cameras up in the corner of an entryway and allow kids to come through. But then you're also going to have staff available to be able to pluck those kids out of the line and hold them aside and verify that temperature. Other things that we're seeing is that calibration on the cameras can be difficult. One thing that we like about the cameras that we're exploring is that it's calibrated based on a box that lives in the same room as the camera. So the camera is always has this constant temperature to read from off of this box, so that its setting doesn't change. We don't get a lot of false reads. So, that'll be important too. You don't want a kid missing 2 weeks of school because the camera wasn't calibrated. So, you're going to want to make sure that when you partner with any type of tech company, that they provide ongoing support, not just an install and they leave, but that you have somebody on site for several days, helping you run live tests and live monitoring and making sure that your staff knows not just how to use the equipment, but how to train other people to use the equipment. So, David, if you'll email me there, we can talk more about it. Or I'm sure we have your contact information. In fact, I know we do. I'll send that your way.
Do we have any other questions? I don't see any hand raises.
I got this one here in the chat. Got a couple here in the private chat. How do we get involved with Clean Slate? Well, you already are. You can get a bill for this webinar, but this is kind of the first step, is learning the information. Second step would be reach out to me so that we can talk a little bit and we can understand as a company what you've already done at your school and what components of Clean Slate. It may be the full smash, and it may be just one or two of these buckets that you need advice and direction on. So there is not a price point per se. Like with any type of consultative effort, it's going to be based on time on target and how complex the solution is. So not trying to be evasive. It's just, the other side of this is one of the reasons we've been valuable in the independent school and alternative schools for so long is because we do come at this with a servant's heart, and we legitimately want to help schools be better and provide. And this isn't designed to be price exclusive. This is designed to help kids get back on campus and help teachers do what they love doing. So that's a good question. I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you heard about those tunnels or things like disinfectant tunnels that people go through and they get kind of sprayed with a mixture of something? Do you guys recommend those things, or are they like too toxic maybe?
I have not. I'm happy to put that up across our advisory board and ask what they think, but I haven't seen those. Sounds a little sounds a little Karen Silkwood to me, but you know, I'd love to say that's the craziest thing I've heard, but it's not. So obviously there's some thought that's gone into that. But yeah, Monica, I'm not opposed at all to running that past our advisory group and seeing if anybody's heard about that, and I'll get you any information that I do have.
I can send you a picture of the ones that I've seen around.
Great. Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I'm picturing my second grader's face as he walks through the spray tunnel. He'd probably love it. So
Right.
let's see. I have a lot. I'm sorry, folks, we have a couple of the same question here. So if you don't feel like the question that I answered the question you have thoroughly, please call me here or email me. So the question here is, do we have to have a facility audit to be a part of Clean Slate? No, you do not. We certainly would need to understand what the condition of your facilities are. You know, for those of you who don't know, a facility audit is a very granular, thorough look at all of your buildings, all of your systems, all of your components. It can include staffing demands, comparison to peer schools, best practices, provides budgeting forecasts on deferred maintenance and on life expectancy. And, you know, these reports can be approaching 2,000 pages. And a facility audit is designed to be sort of the operational Bible of your campus. The data from the facility audit will be housed both in this binder, and then also Building Solutions staff and assessments team will load that data into a CMMS program that you use, School Dude or something similar to School Dude. We'll load that data so that you can manage those numbers appropriately. So that's an intensive undertaking, and obviously that's our bread and butter. So we strongly recommend, if you don't have a facility audit, you need one to support your master plan. But in order to get going on Quick Slate or Clean Slate and kind of get this quick start to kids being back on campus, no, we don't have to do a full dive into a facility audit, but we would need to understand some basic conditions and layout of the campus so that we can make it advise as it pertains to space utilization, I guess. So that's a good question.
Do you have any thoughts about this DHP, dry hydrogen peroxide solution? Have you heard of it or dealt with it at all?
So yes, and I have heard of it in the aspect that it is part of our, hey, we should look into this. But yeah, I actually, John, I saw you pop up. John, what school are you from? Your name just had your name on there.
Mount Perrin Christian School. Okay.
John, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take this offline with you, but I'm going to get you in touch. Is Kevin on the call? Okay. I'm going to get you in touch with just a 30-year plus facilities manager here. And this guy has presented for NBOA. He's helped us develop our cleaning protocol and just gobs and gobs of research. So I might direct you to him. And then what I'll also do is I'll talk to our assessments team and see if this is something that's come across our radar. Like I said, we are adding to our tool belt on this solution daily. And we are also taking things off of the tool belt daily as we, hear, hey, you know what, this turns out it wasn't effective. So
Right.
Great question. And I can tell you that we talked about, I know that we fielded a question last week on an NBOA webinar about the hydrogen peroxide, and Kevin had some good information on that. So I'm going to make sure you guys connect and he can help.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. No, I am not wearing pajama bottoms. That's another real good question. Ha ha ha. I am wearing shorts though. Okay, folks, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're coming up on about 10 to, oh, we got another question. Oh,
No, I just want to remind everybody that this webinar is being recorded, and we'll place it on the website after a few days. And if you want to listen to it again, or if you want to share the link with your compadres, your heads of schools or CFOs or anybody you need to share it with, it will be available. And it'll be available at buildingsolns.com/clean slate. And just want to let you know it'll be available to you here in a few days.
all right. Well, hey, thank you guys all for joining us. Please reach out. Just remember your kids, their parents, your staff. Man, we understand that you got a lot of eyes on you, and if we can help provide some direction, some validation, if you're looking for nothing more than, hey, here are the protocols we put in place. Can you run it past your advisory committee so that we can get some people with initials after their name to say this looks good? You know, if it's just a PR type move like that, you know, we certainly want to be here to service. So don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be sharing more information as we move forward. Good luck to everybody this coming school year. Can't wait to see you all again. Please watch your email. We're going to do more webinars. David, specifically, I've requested that the company that's doing the thermal imaging perform a webinar for us, maybe associated with another service. So as those begin to take shape, we'll make sure that everybody knows about them. So you guys stay safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, don't do anything to stop college football from happening this fall.